All right, so let's talk about world bosses. Tell me again. There's two types of world bosses, right? There's PvP and PvE.
Yep. Yeah. So two types. You get your system message. If you're online, you get the system message. You get the email. Everyone will get it. It'll be very straightforward. If it's a PvE or PvP boss, and then it also gives a little RP message to location and all that. The bosses are pretty much the same for the most part. I just tuned back the ads that spawned a little bit because they were tough and people weren't really engaging as much, more ignoring them. So I wanted people to more want to fight them and get loot off of them as well. And then the PvP bosses got tuned down a little bit too, just because you have the added danger of being in the arena. The PvP arena, once you cross the barrier, you're given the arena TF, and you're attackable to other players that are not in your group.
Okay,
Um,
so that was actually one of my questions for later. So the PvP world bosses, they're not GCW necessarily. It's just
no,
it's each group is on their own.
yeah, it is. It's a literal area TF. If you were not grouped with anyone, every player would be red to you that's inside the arena. And then if you
Interesting.
attack somebody, if you hit somebody, you're given a TF. An actual TF flag will come up on your thing like you would a GCW TF. And if you leave the arena, anyone that has that TF as well or is in the arena can attack you and you can attack back. So then that way people can't just step out and be like, oh, I'm safe now. No, if you attack somebody, you're still TF'd for 5 minutes.
Okay, I was going to ask, how do you get rid of the TEF? So if you leave the arena, you're basically still vulnerable for 5 minutes. But as long as you don't re-enter within 5 minutes, it just fades away.
As long as you don't, you could re-enter as long as you don't re-engage another target with the TEF or a target in the arena.
Now, if you say you're a Jedi, or I don't know, you're lucky enough to have a vehicle spawn that wasn't destroyed, and you're TEF'd and you run away and you try to flee, and someone else is engaging you, but you've like pieced out of combat and the 5 minutes expire, do you still lose the TEF? Or
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, it'll still follow same rules as all the other TEFs do. Same thing if a BH is on you and you have the BH TEF and you don't hit them, it'll drop eventually. Same thing with PvP TEF and all that.
Cool. So you said earlier there's 6 types of world bosses. Do they each give a unique experience with like different ads and mechanics, or are they all pretty similar at this point?
Mechanics wise, the arena functions the same. They each have phases. You'll see the phases. The boss will say something, and then there's also a damage area that spawns and goes around. Anyone that goes to the bosses has seen this or has stood in it, and I've watched them die. But functionality wise, that's all the same for all bosses. Each boss is its own type. It's its own mob. It's got ads that are associated with its story or whatever, and they all have their own loot that they drop. Not every boss drops the same stuff.
Perfect segue into my next question, because I understand that you guys did some unique scripting for the loot to make it so that everybody can loot.
Yes,
Why don't you talk about
it was
that?
a royal pain in the butt, but so it took a little tweaking at first because it wasn't original design. I'm more of like a hey, fight for it type person. That's just me. But I didn't really think about everyone else. And then Ms. 10 and them were like, hey, we should probably make this a little bit easier because the bosses are so hard. And I was like, yeah, okay. So the group that wins the kill the boss will roll twice on his own table, and then he'll have other stuff he can drop as well. So they'll get more of a chance. And then everybody that's on the threat map of the boss, and that includes healing threat. So if you're healing somebody that's attacking the boss, you'll be on the healing threat map of the boss, and is in the arena, will receive one roll on their loot table.
Now, is that in the arena at the time of death?
Yes. If you step out of that arena, if you hit the boss and step out, you're removed from the threat map immediately.
Okay, so if you hit the boss and die and then clone and you're on your way back and the boss dies,
you'll get nothing.
You're out of
Yes,
luck.
you have to be in the arena on the threat map. There was also a range check with the boss. I took that off. Now it just, as long as you're in the arena on the threat map, you should get rolled on that loot.
Cool. I like that. Now, when you say, so the group, you said the group that wins the kill gets 2 rolls on the boss's own personal table.
Yeah, so the loot that the boss drops, he rolls twice on his table. it won't happen every time. There's only a chance for him to roll twice. He could, drop nothing. It's pretty rare because they have other various tables on them without getting too in depth of what's on.
How does that differ from the other groups that participated but didn't necessarily win the kill?
So the participation loot you get guaranteed. This is just when you kill him and that group loots the boss himself. That's where the loot comes from. Where the participation loot is just stuck into your inventory, and then you get a message saying what you got.
Now, is that randomized or is it the same every time?
It will. It just rolls on the table and uses the weight to the table, and then you just get whatever comes out.
Okay, so you're still getting, you still have a chance at getting something from that boss's loot table.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, it is using that boss's loot table.
Now, is that on a per group basis or an individual basis?
Every player. So it's just by player. The amount of players on the threat map it pulls, and then rolls them all, spits the loot out.
Okay. Now I know I'm tying this back into the original question. So now, if every participant who did not win the kill gets participation loot directly deposited into their inventory, but the group that won the kill gets to loot the boss, do they still get individual rewards, or do they as a group have to split what drops?
Yep, everyone, whether it's the winning group or not, will get the participation loot.
Okay.
They just have, so that's like the incentive to try to be the group that kills the boss, which right now usually there's like one, maybe some bosses have two or almost three full groups, but sometimes there's only one, so they're going to get it anyway. But the incentive of having that group that kills the boss or gets the kill on the boss is you get the additional chance for stuff to drop.
Which is then up to the group to decide who gets it.
Yeah, and that's why people complain. They're like, oh, well, what if someone else looted it? I'm like, well, you change your group loot options. That's like the first thing you should do. That's like MMO 101. Hop in the group, tell the group leader to put it on lottery or whatever, and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's actually a feature that a lot of SWG players aren't even aware of, because group looting and stuff isn't as important in SWG as it is in other MMOs.
I completely agree with that. I think people forgot that those options were there initially.
Yeah, the user experience and the UI for it is like, unless you knew the command in a lot of ways, most people just didn't even know it existed until you turned it on.
Yeah, there's not a lot of needing and greeting in SWG.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Try not to compare it to WoW, but
that's really cool. So that answers a lot of my questions, because I knew you guys had special loot rules, but I didn't understand exactly how that works. So that makes sense. So when the boss dies, everybody who's on the threat table and within range or within the arena just straight up gets participation loot given to them, and then the group that actually earned the kill gets the added bonus of being able to loot the boss. But that loot is not for everybody. That has to be decided, like, who gets it.
Yep. Yeah, they'll actually loot that off the boss's corpse.
Cool. How often do these guys spawn?
They have a spawn window. And I think pretty much the players have it narrowed down to know that it's usually respawns in between like 6 to 24 hours. That's a little bit stretched because there's also a despawn window once the boss is killed to allow people to kill ads if they want to. So it kind of changes in that area, but that's pretty much the window that's set right now.
Oh, all right, so that's like at least once a day.
Yeah, you could almost get one a day. It could roll over to be a little bit longer than a day depending, but that was the best way that I thought of to have it be applicable to all time zones.
And it's also not strictly 50-50 chance of PvP or PvE. There is a scale more towards PvE.
Yep.
Very cool. I'm guessing you guys have plans to potentially add more in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely a system that we could build out and fine-tune a little bit more. This was just, people have discussed world bosses before. Other servers have done them. And, people were, when we initially did it, they were like, oh, hey, you're copying these people. I'm like, world bosses have been in games forever. Any MMO had some form of world boss at some point. This game just never really got it. And this was just something I was like, hey, I'm gonna try to throw this together and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll be honest. With so many private SWG servers out there, pretty much you guys are probably going to have people, shouting, "Hey, you're stealing this from so and so," no matter what you implement, and I would just ignore them.
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
you have to.
And like not even that, like people say, oh, like you're stealing code. Like no, like that's not how it works. Our custom script system is wrote specifically for us. Like nobody has a copy of that. So you can't just copy and paste someone else's code and throw it in there and expect it to work.
Right. That's cool. All right, well, I think that's really all I've got for world bosses, unless you guys think there's any additional information you'd like to share.
I think that's pretty much it. We did add a no build zone around them recently. That's fairly new because there's been some issues with houses dropping and bases dropping and people dragging mobs inside and they get stuck, and then that's pretty much exploiting a bug of the mob not being able to find its way back out.
Speaking of dragging, can you pull the world boss out of the arena, or are they scripted to stay inside?
So he will break. He'll piece at the arena edge, but he won't wipe his threat map. Originally, he used to wipe his threat map, and people were abusing that. So now he just pieces and runs back to the center. The ads, however, will walk out of the arena. You can't attack them, but they can attack you. So you need to be careful.
Gotcha. Cool. I guess speaking of interesting AI coding, let's real quick talk about contraband scans. Because I know this is another thing that Fastburn and I talked briefly about in DMs about getting scanned in the wild and having like I'm assuming that's like the probot that comes in out of the atmosphere and like does a quick scan on you, and if they detect anything, they summon like a Lambda shuttle.
Yeah.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. So there's two types. There's your wild contraband scans, and then there's your city contraband scans. Both function similar, except for the wild one, the probot comes down. It'll do initial check on you. Obviously, if you're attackable to it, because it'll be Imperial, it'll alert and then call, and you'll get attacked. But if not, if it finds something, it'll call the Lambda. The Lambda lands, and then they rescan you, and then it'll act like the city scan.
Now let's clarify for those who may not know what counts as contraband.
Okay. Counting as contraband. One, if you're a Jedi, they could find out you're a Jedi. You can do the Jedi mind trick automatically, and it rolls a chance for you to Jedi mind trick the trooper, the stormtrooper that's scanning you, and then they'll just walk away. Or they'll call code black, it's called, and then they call down reinforcements, and you get teft to that faction. Doesn't matter what faction you are, you get teft to that faction, and they attack you. So, and then also, besides the Jedi, if you're a rebel and it's an Imperial searching you, they could find out that you're, opposite faction, so either direction. And then you could also get set overt from that because they figure out who you are. Well, they would set you covert in the regular system. And then item-wise, they'll look through your inventory. Anything sliced by a smuggler, any spices, they tally up and then they'll fine you for it.
Gotcha. Now, what if? Well, first of all, silly question: can you mind trick the probot?
No.
No, you cannot.
So
Okay.
the probot can find something on you, and then the follow-up team can not find something on you.
Right.
That's definitely possible because it's two separate roles.
Of course, it just means he, dropped it on the ground in between scans. Okay.
Yeah, and smugglers do have a chance to hide items that are on you if they're in your group and within range.
Right, and that's a passive, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that
Cool.
automatically will happen, just like the mind trick, same thing.
If you're Imperial, how does that work? You lose faction points?
Yeah, so you'll lose faction points and they'll still fine you credits.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're high enough rank, do you, supersede the scan?
Yes, they also, if you're Imperial, you're getting searched by a stormtrooper. If they see you're ranked, then they'll see that, and then they'll say, they have a little thing they say with your name and your rank and stuff, and apologize. And
Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember that was a feature. I don't remember what rank you need to be for that to take place, but it's cool that that's still a thing.
I think it's the officer ranks.
yeah, I believe you're correct on that one.
I see Jedi Mind Trick. I mean, obviously, we just talked about the Jedi Mind Trick being functional, but I didn't see in parentheses, all Jedi abilities are functional now. So, I mean, how does that feel?
So that was like, we had these Mantis reports that just sat forever. And I've been going on down this list just trying to knock stuff out. And, a lot of them were tied to the new AI, which was my whole drive to just like attack it and get it functioning, which obviously we did because we're using it now. But getting all the skills are in finally. It's been forever that we've had, a handful of skills.
Oh, wait, sorry, you're still on all Jedi skills, not all game wide. I was gonna say, what about conceal shot?
Yeah, that's in as well. I did conceal shot.
Nice.
Yep. So that's what I mean. Like that was part of it. There's stuff we couldn't do with the old AI that the new AI we were able to do, and it nailed all the rest of the skills, and they're done. So Jedi specifically, going off of this note, this is a different Jedi mind trick than the one in the Contraband scans. This is the actual ability where you can trick someone's pet, and it will go back to its natural state. So if it's aggressive and it's near them, it'll attack them.
Ability to rotate vendors and decoration in buildings.
Yes, and every, not just rotate them on one axis, but on all the axes.
That was my next question. The yaw and pitch, beautiful. I know a lot of people must have been happy when that was added.
Oh yeah, the malls have gotten prettier for sure.
Real quick, tell me about socket generation for wearables, because I believe Fastburn and I asked you about this because I wasn't really sure what you meant by it. Obviously, when it is this related? It's got to be related to Taylor, right? And the number of sockets on clothing when they make it.
Yes, you're 100% correct on that. The formula was bad. It was just a little bit of bad math on generating, so it wasn't generating quite like live was.
So is it more likely to get higher sockets now or less likely?
Count-wise, I would say it's probably about I don't know, comparative number-wise. It's more like live. There's information in that Mantis report that kind of goes over it. But you definitely, as you progress in Taylor, you'll see that you'll get your higher socket counts as you go up. And then if you're low enough, you can't get 4 sockets at all, which is proper.
Gotcha. So I guess let's talk about the new EC tools. It says here configurable areas, NPC formations, and controllable NPCs, which is the one that is most interesting to me. But first, just talk about NPC formations.
That came from Hakry's work on reinforcements for, or cleaning up the reinforcements for Crackdown and for base reinforcements whenever a base has been sliced. And he just kind of made it more versatile so that we could use it in pretty much any way we want.
So does that mean when you guys are doing an event, instead of having to turn invisible and run around and spawn event NPCs one at a time over and over and over again, you can hit a button and spawn a whole formation?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds helpful.
It's not for every type of NPC. It is generally for faction NPCs. But yeah, it definitely helps.
What about configurable areas? What does that mean?
So that came from the PvP boss and PvE boss functionality. We have the ability to create effectively a copy of that anywhere in the world that can be used in a lot of different ways depending on what we want to do. We can create a PvP only area. We can create an area where you can't be attacked. We can create faction specific areas. It's pretty much any kind of idea that we would like to do. We could also, for instance, like create it so you can't summon pets in there, so you can't, interrupt a event with large pets.
Okay, yeah, wow, all right, that's exciting. So basically, almost like the village. Then it's like how the village has like a no entry unless you're flagged for. Can you create custom flags for entry like that?
Not like that exactly, but
maybe down the road.
So similar system that the village uses with the kickback.
Right.
But you can't just on the fly create one because it's obviously got to have certain checks that it puts in. You can't just add it in. But the command is pretty verbose on spawning the area. You literally create the area, set the size. You can put a battlefield ring around it. You can name it. And then there's a bunch of little flags that you can add to it. Like we can lock an area. And then if you're not a staff member, it kicks you out like the village does, when you hit the wall. And then also we can do it factionally aligned, stuff like that. We can make it a PvP area like the world boss areas are. Like Fastburn says, there's a no pet area. So if you run in with a pet, it stores it. If you try to call it, it denies it.
So that's, oh dude, I mean, come on. The application for that is just unbelievable. So if you're doing another large scale PvP event, you could put faction only zones around each faction's like base so that each faction has a safe haven to retreat to.
And that was the idea behind that. Yep.
That's so dope.
And like I'm kind of jumping here, but working on the new GCW zone that it's kind of in the works. That is a overt no pet area. Obviously no build as well.
So wait, new GCW zone, what is this?
So I'd made a post on the forums about it, not sure if you'd seen it or not, but I'm creating an area somewhere that is kind of could be comparable to like Restus.
Yeah.
And pretty much we're building it from scratch. The ECs are working on design right now. I got it spawning, walls go up, some buildings, and then they're just trying to make it look like a battle zone before I add more functionality to it itself. So, but there'll be more to come in the future on that once I start working on it.
Now, hold on, wait. Is this a thing that like once you build it, you guys are going to place it and it's going to be in the world 24/7, or is this a thing that can spawn and despawn?
It will be there. It'll be there all the time.
Tell me a little bit about the helper droids. Like, I remember them from live, but I don't 100% remember their functionality. So everybody gets one when you spawn in. Do you get like a pop-up message when you load into your first location? Or like, tell me a little bit about how they work and what it took to get them functional.
So the helper droids will pretty much be the annoying little green droid that pops up as soon as you create a character. He'll keep doing that every time you shuttle or log in for 24 hours. Pretty much they offer just some information. There's some drop-down menus on them that open your holocron to different pages and stuff like that, which is something we actually didn't even have functioning right. I kind of had to toy around to figure it out, and I finally did. And then also they offer like starter quests for new professions, and they can get, like pick their weapon. But he'll pop up if he's out and you train a skill, and that period is still up. That first 24-hour period. So it'll be like, hey, I have you just learned Novice Brawler. You want to do the Novice Brawler quest? And they offer like 5 different things. And that's where you'll get like your, get a speeder from it and some other little things that they offer as like quest rewards that a newbie would want.
Like a travel ticket, a cloner ticket.
Yep. Yep. So like you'll get 1 free ticket purchase with it. And then one free, clone from it. So
that's pretty cool. What happens after the first 24 hours are up?
You'll still keep the droid. You can keep it as long as you want. But once you destroy it, it won't come back. But it just won't automatically spawn when you zone in. So
it even mentions JTL.
That it does.
That's, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point. I mean, misleading people.
I don't know. I helped Phoenix with some JTL stuff that he's working on.
I'm still waiting for the call to record some voice lines for the space stations.
Oh boy, that would actually be pretty cool. Have some community members recording in-game lines.
I mean, we need space traffic controllers, don't we?
But yeah, right? JTL is still happening in the background.
Oh, I believe it. What else we got?
We could talk about some of the new quests. We haven't really touched on that yet because that kind of.
Oh yeah, the Cries of Alderaan and stuff like that.
Yep.
Go ahead, tell me a little bit about those.
Well, there were just some remaining missing quests that got added in. Just kind of the tail end of things that are missing from 14.1/1.0. Darn Droid 1 and 2. I finished up Mrs. Cries of Alderaan Act 3. That was a real pain in the butt. The serum is in as well with that. So that's a huge one because the accuracy it provides. And then the Secrets of Siren is partially implemented. Lo Schultz is still working on finishing that up.
No, obviously. Go ahead.
Sorry, once he finishes that, because Darn Droid 1 and 2 was done by one of our new development interns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm saying this right, Cupcakis or something.
Yeah, I was Cupcakeus. I don't know.
But once we get Seekers of the Siren fully implemented, I believe that's every quest that we know of working and functional.
Wow, that's crazy.
But we've been at that like last 5% for a long time, so
Yeah,
Right.
those are more ending threads that are just getting woven into the fabric.
All right, let's talk about the armor resist decay. I know we've been kind of like putting it off because it's probably one of the more complicated things to talk about, but so from what I understand, this is the lower a piece of armor's condition gets, the lower the actual damage resistances begin to drop. Is that correct?
So this is more specific to AI, and you know how before you could just dot them and they would build a battle fatigue and it would drop their resistances down. Well, that was improper. Hence, it was so easy to kill things with a commando because you could just dot them, wait till it ticks down. What we were missing is kind of just the dynamic that the damage that the armor lets pass through, so it doesn't actually mitigate, causes damage to the armor and it tallies up. And this is where it gets kind of tough to explain. So say you're doing kinetic damage to an NPC. The NPC's got 70% kinetic, 30% damage passes through, causing damage to the armor.
Right.
So that damage that passes through is all added up, and then once that reaches 25% of the total ham value of the mob, the decay begins.
So, okay. Yeah, I can see where this starts to get complicated. So, you're saying once the mob's ham reaches 25%, they start losing armor resist, but is that it's got to be the armor resist that they start losing is directly related to the type of damage they're taking, or is it all of them?
It's all of them. So,
Okay.
you know, obviously a mob has more different damage types. So if there's a bunch of people attacking, it could happen fairly quick. But if it's got a really high resistance to that type, not a lot of damage is going to pass through, so it's going to take longer to do. So like
Sure.
if it's a 95% mob, you're only adding 5% of your damage in, obviously, and that's the only damage that's actually hitting the mob of that type. So
Gotcha. So this is I totally misunderstood. I was under the impression originally that this was player armor, but this is for NPCs.
yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So nothing has changed in the functionality of player armor then.
No, that's still the same.
Got it.
It's not going to be as quick to get to that point, though.
They'll be a little bit, I would say, tougher in that aspect, because if you dot them, that doesn't count towards that damage. So it has to be like direct damage done. So where people are dotting them, and they're like the bosses that were like, oh, we're done. You know, the boss's armor doesn't decay. Well, most of the damage they're doing is by these fire dots, poisons, whatever, bringing the ham actual value down. But that doesn't add towards that amount of damage done. We'll run some numbers just to kind of get it a little more clear. We'll say
Sure.
the health is 100,000, the action's 100,000, the mine's 100,000.
Okay.
Total value, it's got 300,000 saved. So you need 25% of that 300,000 to pass through of actual damage, not including dot damage. And then you'll start to see at that 25% mark, so you'll still have 75% of the total ham value left. You'll start to decay, and it only decays down 25%, and it stops at 50. So the resistance will only drop, say if it's 90, it'll only drop to 45, and so on.
Wait, you said it only drops 25%, but it stops at 50. Say that again.
So we would be at 75% since we started 100.
Yep.
It drops down 25% towards 75. It'll only drop down to 50, so we drop down 25 to 50, and then it'll stop. So it'll only ever be
Okay, so when the
half
ham is at 50%, the resist will be
50%,
half of what it was when it started,
Yep.
and that's when it stops decaying.
and that's where it stops. Yeah.
I think I understand. Does that count if it's like you said? Okay, so it counts as long as it's getting hit with different damage types, but a dot doesn't count as a damage type.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that the armor absorbs in any way, so it's not going to actually affect the armor.
Yeah. You have to think of it as the mob is actually wearing a tangible piece of armor, and you're damaging that piece of armor.
I see.
And in the aspect that if it doesn't have any resistance to a damage type, that doesn't count at all. You'll do more actual damage to the mob, but you won't decay the armor at all.
Oh, so a Jedi can't swing
Yep.
in and melt an NPC's armor for everybody else.
Yep, exactly.
Hmm.
And that is a 14.1 change. That is from SOE.
You know what? Okay, again, designer brain getting triggered here. I think for future possibilities, then that sounds to me like there could be the open design space for some sort of armor breaking ability.
Yeah, I mean that's always a possibility.
Some sort of move that does little damage but helps reduce, brings that maybe that 25% number lower so that you could start reducing resistances quicker.
Yeah, honestly, I'm on the firm part of that I wouldn't want to do that too much because I like tough mobs.
Sure.
If we make it too easy, like the crate farmers didn't like this because their crate farming got harder. And then you're just giving loot away. Tough mobs are supposed to be tough. So we don't want to break it too much too quickly, or else then we're just back at square one with the dots doing the damage.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a personal opinion of mine, but like everything can be balanced. Like if you're making it so that the crate farmers have a harder time killing crates, then you can always just increase the drop rates on crates so that they end up netting the same amount of loot per hour. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, very true.
It's a dumb thing to complain about. I would say 90% of people, when they read on the forums or a blog post or something about some sort of change, they look at that change in a vacuum and don't realize that other changes can be made in parallel to like offset certain, drawbacks or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, our goal still, even though Finalizer is a what if sort of platform for us, where our goal is still to hit 14.1 and all its blemishes and mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of it.
All right, what are we missing?
One thing I would mind talking about is the controllable NPCs.
Yeah, sorry, let's go back to that. That was what I was excited about, and I totally forgot.
So when I started helping out with the event coordination team, one thing I wanted to do is put some like kind of pie in the sky functionality that would be awesome for role playing for small events that are, a dozen people or 24 people and not like a whole planet or the whole server, just so that you can have like on the spot mean something different than what people are used to, where it's, oh, I'm fighting Tuscans, or oh, I'm fighting this. And I put this on there and I didn't expect anything to happen, and then Hakry like checked all the boxes and bam, it works. But basically we can control any NPC just like to move in a particular place, to say a specific thing. We can set their mood. We can set if they're attackable or not. We can, they can be the leader of a patrol formation. So you can tell them to move and then the patrol formation will follow them.
That's awesome.
So like that, we've used it in a few events where if I put down a patrol unit and like the players are backing off and I want to kind of progress the fight, I might take control of the leader and have him move to like say a bridge and then stop there, and then they can engage them as they normally would. It's really cool functionality. I've tried to use it for some other events and it has all the same problems with pathing. So some places you can't really use them very well, just like normal NPCs, because it will actually walk to where you are located. So if I have Vader go up a set of stairs, he's going to do the same thing on the stairs that all the other NPCs do on stairs or buildings, etc.
Adds a more RP-esque functionality to it that we couldn't really do before.
Like when it went live, I think Hakry and I both took squads of stormtroopers into different cantinas and messed with the
players in the area. Yeah, like I did the Isley, drug troopers through, had them say stuff to players that were like, what is this?
If you were really good, though, could you simulate a conversation between multiple NPCs?
Yes.
In real time?
Yeah, it would be a little tough. I would probably want to have something scripted out so you don't typo anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you could just click over, update to use that NPC, say something back, or have it set up that you have two people there and one is controlling one, and the other each has their own script, and then they just put their little lines in.
My main thing is I want to be able to, if, say we're like the next big event we have holiday wise is Halloween, and if I just want to, just as an ambiance thing, to spend a few hours going between NPCs and cantinas that are popular and just having NPCs muttering about what's happening in the quest event that we do
Mm-hmm.
for Halloween, and just kind of that little I guess you call it flavoring for role playing, whatever you want to call it, that little depth to it. Just being able to do that is huge for me.
Early on, we had some really great EC tools, but they were all on the old admin command system when we used at commands. Not this intricate as we have now with NPC movement, but there was a lot of cool stuff we added in. But then once the object restructure happened, and then we started using actual / commands that were already in the client, then it we lost them and just never really got back to adding a whole ton of new stuff in. But also there's a lot of stuff you couldn't add in, like you couldn't do this with the old AI, not even a chance. You couldn't do this until I added in the flags to have NPCs move in this manner or take direction like this. They wouldn't do it. They would do their own things.
That's awesome. Just because I see it on here, you guys, you've added a configurable option for GCW Overt Covert. So that means you've made it so that server admins can toggle off and on the Overt Covert system. Is that correct?
Yes. And to lean in on that, it will be enabled the next time Finalizer comes online or gets the updates pushed and is restarted. I'll put it that way.
Are either of you comfortable explaining the difference between the on-leave combatant special forces and the overt covert?
Absolutely. I actually wrote up a good thread called Understanding the Covert Overt GCW Change.
Perfect. Send me the link to that and I will include it in the video description. But go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, because I know there's going to be a lot of confused people because people don't remember the GCW Covert Overt TEF system and all that. I'll go off my post. It'll make it pretty easy to stay on track. We'll be looking to enable the Covert Overt GCW system on Finalizer when we merge in the near future. So I'm making an effort to help some folks understand the Covert Overt system a bit more. The current system has the following statuses: neutral, on leave as a faction, combatant, and special forces. With Covert Overt, there's only 3 statuses. You can either be neutral, covert, a faction aligned, or overt. With the Covert Overt system, a player can receive a temporary enemy flag for the following actions: healing a player that has a TEF of the same faction, healing an overt player of the same faction if your status is covert. So if you're covert and you heal an overt, you're pretty much saying, hey, I helped this guy that's my faction, though you don't know I'm that faction because I'm covert. Now I have an enemy flag. Covert scanners at GCW bases were added in. They can detect players that are covert and they'll give them a temporary enemy flag as well. If you attack an NPC as a covert, you'll get a TEF. Or if you attack a player of the opposite faction, you'll get a TEF.
If you're covert, you're not able to attack NPCs?
So if you're covert, they will be yellow. They won't attack you. They won't be aggressive because you're a covert operative.
Mm-hmm.
But if you attack them, they'll turn red. You'll get a TEF, and you'll also be attackable by players because you're attacking that faction.
And the TEF lasts for 15 minutes. Is that what I'm reading here, GCW TEFs?
So I did change that. There's an update post. Hold on, we'll move on to that. So the updates had changed. Originally, doctors enhancing players would get a TEF. We removed that because it kind of takes away from doctors being able to do their thing. So they won't get the TEF like healing would. The TEF timer was reduced to 5 minutes from the original 15 like it was on live.
Let me interrupt you here. We go back to the doctor's thing. What about healing wounds?
That counts as a healing ability, as a helping healing ability. So that will give you a TEF.
Oof, okay.
TEF timer was reduced to 5 minutes. From the 15 like it was on live. The resignation timer was originally an hour on live. I had set it that way because that's just how it was, and that's what the already added in client strings had was hours, but I just modified, made new ones, and we made it back to 15 minutes because it was kind of unrealistic. And now faction pets will require you to be overt to be called. Covert players cannot call faction pets because as a covert operative, you would be known if you had a stormtrooper following you around or an ATST.
So I see going from covert to overt, you need to be within 50 meters of a faction base.
So you can declare overt. There's a command that you do /declare. It'll allow you to go instantly overt if you're covert. So you can hop into PvP or something if you wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm still looking at your original post that says the declare overt command has also been implemented and requires a covert player to be within 50 meters of a friendly faction headquarters. Oh, to immediately change. Okay.
Yep. Instead of going to a recruiter, which a recruiter is immediate too, but you have to find a recruiter. Whereas this, you could like run up towards the base, /declare, turn around, and go get in the fight.
Oh, but what if there's no? So declare overt command doesn't work in the wild. You still need to be within a base range.
Yeah, you need to be within a base range. Yep.
Gotcha. So there's no way. Well, yeah, there's no way to go overt. You can't like opt into it by attacking or healing. That's just getting the TEF.
So you could actually jump into a fight that way. That's kind of the beauty of being covert, is you could heal someone, get a faction TEF, and then you'd be able to jump into the fight.
But you're still covert, just TEF'd, you're not officially overt. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that, I think the covert overt system, it's definitely a more superior system when it comes to the GCW and not being able to fight for your faction, like if your base is getting attacked. And that kind of leeways us into talking about GCW bases because the two kind of tie hand in hand. The base stuff won't be coming this next merge, but all the code for it's done. The changes we're looking to do for GCW bases are removing PvE bases and also restricting the amount placed planet-wide, and also the base clusters. You won't be able to place bases in the 3 cluster anymore. You'll just be able to have one base, and then the next closest one is going to be some distance away.
Wow, okay. I imagine you get quite a bit of feedback from that.
Yeah, we actually ended up having to lock the thread because people were bickering with each other so much over it. But the issue we're seeing is the bases were being abused.
The bases as they were a not negligible amount of credits entering the system, items entering the system, and the amount of XP you could get per hour was vastly superior than most other content and NPCs in the world. So for some people, it's why not just do that for everything.
All right, what are we missing?
So the command queue. This is also going to mess with people a little bit because it's going to change the combat style some. But hopefully, overall, gameplay should seem smoother with doing things in game. We'll know for sure once it gets on Finalizer. It's a large piece of code. Pretty much everything you do in game is a command. Opening your data pad, buying a ticket, everything through the client was handled as a / command. So the queue is super important. It's not just combat. Combat, you see it the most if there's a problem because it's so quick with commands going into your combat queue. But not all commands get added to that queue. They'll be in the main queue. So currently the way the system works right now is there's a list, your stuff's added to it, but things are activated separately. There's like your regular queue and then there's your immediate queue, and commands that are immediate commands just get fired randomly whenever, which is not proper. It should all be a single list, which is what we made it. It's all handled in what's just called the command queue now. So all abilities are added to the list. It'll check the list when it knows there's stuff added to it. And then anything that's immediate, it'll fire first. If it's a front command, that command gets moved to the front of the list. So things like buying a ticket, like posture changes, an immediate command, opening your data pad, status, your states updates, stuff like that pass through for your commands, they'll get hit first. Where people will be a little tripped up is like combat, where they're going to see like slight differentiation and delays of things firing because it is actually one whole list. But there's also the flip side where you're going to see other things run better. One thing that caught my eye this was like an accidental fix that came with it, was like if you've ever been a Jedi or something and you're trying to re-equip items that have the slots of other items, it wouldn't work. So now if I have like a full set of clothes on and you equip a Jedi robe, it actually fully unequips all those items and then puts my robe on.
Nice.
Instead of just like unequipping my boots, my jacket, and then like my pants being on and being like, oh, you can't equip this because of this item. So it's actually like running the list through properly. But that's going to need a lot of major testing. So Finalizer is going to do that for us. I've got a lot of great feedback from people on Prime that hopped on, not just from combat, but like doing some crafting and stuff. So hopefully that's smoother too. No, not as many hangups with the crafting. Calling vehicles should be smoother, mounting, stuff like that.
But you said people are probably going to notice slowdowns in combat.
I wouldn't say slowdowns, just the way the commands fire are going to be a little different. They're going to have to be cognizant of their postures, their posture delays, their knockdown delays. Whereas if you get knocked down, you have that 5-second delay where no abilities will fire and they don't automatically get removed from your queue. But if you use a posture during that time, that'll work. But if you're combat delayed, like War Cry or Panic Shot, and nobody hits you, obviously, to break it, then you can't do anything. No matter what you put in your queue, it just sits there until you clear it or the delay clears.
That brings up an interesting question. So posture or changing postures in the current system, I don't believe that's put into the combat queue because you can change postures as quickly as you can hit the ability.
Yes, so that's where you're going to see the difference because that gets fired by your immediate queue in the current system, where this is all one queue now. So it'll get added to the list, and when the list cycles around the check again, which it'll be pretty quick. You know, the difference is like 200 milliseconds. Actually, no, it's 100 milliseconds. I reduced it. So 100 milliseconds is the difference. It'll check that list real quick, find to see if there's an immediate command like postures, and then fire that first before it fires the stuff ahead of it.
I'm just wondering if, because as it is right now, if you get dizzy, knocked down, whatever, you can, I don't want to say spam, but you can attempt to stand multiple times before your next action triggers. Is that still going to be a thing, or is each standing attempt going to be a whole action now?
Yeah, so each standing attempt, it'll fire that, run 100 milliseconds, and then try to fire your next action. But I definitely, well, depending when we get to merge, I'm hoping this weekend. LK's been super busy, so we'll see on that. And it also depends when the video ends up coming out and whatnot with the chat. So hopefully this is on Finalizer soon, and people can they're going to have to tweak their macros. If you have like a clear combat queue stand or something, you're going to have to add like a little delay in there just to kind of let it parse the command. But it's handling things as it should have been done originally. That's why we couldn't have Warcry function properly, because of the delay. We tried to make it work, and it just causes a deadlock because two commands are trying to activate at once. Then the object's getting changed by two different threads and the server locks up. So now with this, everything's handled all out of the command queue, so it only runs one at a time. Gotcha.
I'm sure once people get used to it, then nobody will really care.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be one of those things that they're going to see the pros with it, and then like the difference, the change, they'll just eventually get used to, and it won't be a big deal anymore.
Very cool.
So there was a thread that caught my eye, and it was just one of those things that I was like, hey, this thread looks good. It's got some votes on it. Let me look at it. It's in the future server ideas. It's called Guild Management System Update. So I read it. The original poster in it was asking for some major changes to the guild system, but I'm like, well, there's definitely things we could do now without doing a full rewrite on it. And I kind of went off and started working on some things to see where I posted some updates. You can read the thread, but the back end of where we ended, pretty much what I added was when someone connects or disconnects that's in your guild, you'll get a guild chat message that says so-and-so has connected or is online, and then so-and-so has gone offline, like you would a friends list update, but it'll be in guild chat. I also added what's called a guild access device. So if you go to your guild terminal, and anyone in the guild can do this, they go to the guild terminal, they will get a radio menu option on it that says retrieve guild access device. They'll get an object in their data pad, and it spawns a little members window that's part of a UI that was in the client that was never used by SOE. And we kind of, with some time killing work with Phoenix helping me out with some SUI stuff, which is just like the user interface for players, we were able to remove some buttons and get stuff functioning because the buttons didn't actually work. So now when you open that, it'll say your guild name at the top, the guild leader can set a memo using his device that will last until server restart. And then your online members show in one category, the offline members show in the other, the last time they logged in, and then your guild enemies as well, and the guild war status. And then also, you can, if you have the rights, you can sponsor and accept people wherever you are.
That's awesome. Can you sponsor people that aren't nearby you, or do they have to be within range of you still?
They still have to be within range of you. You
Okay.
just don't have to be at your guild hall.
That's still amazing.
Yeah. Oh, and it also will show the title, your guild title. So the guild leaders is added automatically, but if you like give someone the rank of officer, and then it'll show up in the guild window next to their name.
The last thing we forgot to talk about that I can think of real quick is the changes to the Bazaar terminal.
Any armor or clothing attachment that is dropping currently should have the actual bonus and the type of bonus, the skill, in its name. Instead of it just being clothing attachment, it'll say plus 10 taming wild creatures, or plus 10 melee defense, or what have you. That way it's much easier to search on the Bazaar. Also, resources now auto stack whenever they're put into a container, and to make it a little bit easier for people. And whenever you put a stack of resources up for, say you put a 100k brick up and you put it for 100k price, it's automatically calculating how much CPU you want, and it puts it on the actual Bazaar, so you can look for this particularly rare resource that might be on the Bazaar or in a vendor, and it'll tell you how much credits per unit that number that they have is. So it makes it a little bit easier to shop, basically.
No, it doesn't. It makes it infinitely easier to shop. Like, as somebody, like, let me explain something to you, okay? There's a part of me that regretted getting to Korra to play SWG again, because every night it was, hey, can you check the Bazaar for me to see if there are any entertainer clothing attachments listed at a good price? And I would have to scroll through about 25 pages of clothing attachments looking for musical mind enhancement and dancing mind enhancement tapes, one click at a time. I'm pretty sure I worn out a mouse clicking through pages. And now I can just type in mind enhancement and boom, there it is. Or if I need a certain resource to craft, doctor buffs, I can type in the resource name, boom, there it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice quality of life thing.
Oh my god, it's probably the best thing to be added since jukeboxes.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we did recently that's not on this list. Oh, I added in some spatial stuff that kind of ties into the Contraband city scans. So once all that's on, people see more greetings from NPCs in cities. If you're faction ranked, it'll say you'll say your name and your rank and stuff. That's just kind of something we were missing. I added in the checks. If you say Jedi near Imperial targets or Imperial NPCs, they'll find you and knock you down.
That's awesome.
So that was something we were missing.
I think that's probably it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the recent commits, see if there's anything. Oh, there are FRS changes that'll be enabled with the next merge.
Yes, the decay, right?
Yep. The maintenance task will automatically run every 24 hours regardless of login, so you'll lose your XP and you'll get demoted if you decide to just stop playing or don't log in for whatever X period of time. That way you can't block a rank or something.
I think that's smart.
Because right now you can stay in that rank because it doesn't even though it's adding up the maintenance tests each day while you're not online, it's not deducting it until you actually log in.
Yep. And then also we changed the kill list for PvP. Originally it wouldn't clear for 3 days. We shortened it to 12 hours and also made the list from holding 20 names to 10. So you can cycle your list a little bit easier.
That's got to be it, right? I don't want to keep you guys for too long. Plus, I've got to grab something to eat before I get ready for work again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to go to work. No, I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered everything. Or most of it. If not, we'll.
And there's nothing JTL related you wanted to say. I know, like you said, you work with some stuff with Phoenix.
So I'll keep it pretty short. Phoenix did make a post. He did post something in the development chat the other day on Discord, so it was public, that says he was working on it, and he is. I assisted him recently in merging his branch, which was a JTL branch previously that Rios had worked on. If anyone ever caught a video we made some time ago on the EMU channel I uploaded, I launched into space in that video. That's that branch. So he's working on the back end work of the Occ tree that's needed for JTL. So I helped him get his branch merged up to date, and he's still continuing to work on that. But not a lot of updates to go from there because he's kind of one man showing it.
So, like, what is possible at this time? Just like flying around?
He's got a pretty good amount of stuff done, just making sure it's done properly back end wise. But a lot of that was already in there. Like your ships get created, you can launch into space, you can land, stuff like that.
But no combat, right?
I believe combat works somewhat in there. I'm not sure where he is because he had to rewrite a bunch of stuff to implement the back end stuff properly. Then
what
I'm not
about
sure
what about collisions?
I know there was collision stuff added previously. As far as I'm concerned, it was working. I don't know if it still is or not, or if it's something that just needs to be tweaked. But when I flew in that, I crashed into Rios because he was up there too, and there was collision. So
cool.
Yeah, the two big things that he has to get done are, we've outlined in the past, is the ship positioning with Octree, and a better way for Core 3 to interpret the combat. And they're big things that not a lot of other developers can help him on. Once he gets those done, I expect there'll be a lot of people just, I'll help you with quests, I'll help you with spawns and drops. And I think that these are kind of the roadblocks that we have to get through to get really big progress.
What about POB ships? Because I imagine those function totally differently than like starfighters.
That I'm not sure on. We'd have to talk with him more on that. I know that you can launch them and stuff like that, but I'm not sure specifically what's working and what's not in that aspect.
Yeah,
I don't think they're set up in his branch yet.
Yeah, I would imagine they're a totally different beast. Really? I don't know. I mean, that sounds so challenging because you would have people walking around in the, ground engine of the game while their position in the 3D engine is being constantly changing. Or is constantly changing while someone's flying. I mean, that right there, as like someone who only has like 2 years of programming under their belt, blows my mind. So I don't know how that works.
Lots of learning on the fly.
Yeah, the thing you have to think of is from scratch, though. They don't have control points to start. They don't have entrances and exits as far as hooked into the actual Core 3 side of it. So there's still a lot of like these little things that have to be hooked together with POB ships. That's still going to be a little bit later, but we have to get those big ticket items done, and then this will be a lot. I think there'll be a lot more people coming from other servers to come do something that benefits them, that they're excited about. I guess that's my main thing as a kind of closing thing is we will always test things that are going to Finalizer on Prime. And if somebody wants to know if it's we are pretty specific about if it's a unique to Finalizer change or if it's a 14.1 change, but TC Nova will always be 14.1. So if you want to try something in that way, you can. If you want to try it how it's going to affect Finalizer, that's going to be on Prime.
Nice.
We could always use more help.
For sure.
Hell yeah. All right. If we come up with anything else that we feel like we want to add to this, we can always add more.
Yeah. No, I think we did pretty good coverage. We can go that for a minute here. So.
Yep. Cool. I definitely appreciate your guys' time, and thanks for being patient with me at the beginning.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's all good. I appreciate you stepping up to do this as well. It's definitely something we need to do for a minute here.
All right. Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Thanks again. I'm heading out. I will see you all in the future.
All right, maybe take her easy.